Recording in
All right. Hello, hello. Again, this is a video three in my series of presentations of me doing videos of the presentations and conference um, talks that I've had in the years of 2022 and 2023. I have plenty of time right now because it's the summer. I'm also recovering from surgery. So I'm like, I have a lot of time on my hands to get these videos out. So I apologize if they're being a little too long or anything, but this is a way for me to introduce you to my work. This is a way for me to get the word out. This is a way for you to possibly use all kinds of facts and information. And as you can see from behind me, we are going to be going over Encanto and the Madrigal family. And I am pairing this with Gloria Anzaldua. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. So this is a clip of me from, oh, that shouldn't be up. My bad. Um, so this was me presenting at UT in San Antonio, Texas, their downtown location. My presentation was The Shadow Beast, Gloria Anzaldúa, and Disney's Encanto. And this actually took place in November 5th of 2022. So if you had been watching the last two videos, I do talk about how the first two presentations, I wrote these out as a speech, I wrote these out as a paper, which did come in handy for later. So I'm not going to knock that system if it's something that helps you. But I am also starting to get to this kind of the stage in who I am as a student presenter or a presenter in general, where I'm more comfortable doing PowerPoint and kind of just shooting it all from the hip as if I was teaching a class. Um, so oftentimes in presentations, I'm like, right, everybody understand. Very interactive, which is might not be something most people are used to, especially if you adhere to the older traditional styles of how we do conferences. But this also keeps people's attention. Good a lot. It keeps people's attention. Um, so yeah, just wanted to show you that, and then I'm gonna go ahead and get this set up for my presentation. And even though you're going to see like, okay, there's images, there's things and things like that. Um, for the most part, there's not a lot of words. There's not like whole paragraphs. So this is going to be me talking to you. I think I should read screen first. All right. Screen share and just screen because I do have to hop around from tab to tab. Okay, I'm gonna open this up. So the Shadow Beast, Gloria Anzaldúa, and Disney's Encanto. So in the last two videos, I did mention Gloria Anzaldúa bringing her into a zombie panel on the Deconocimientos process and the Shadow Beast. So we're going to get a little bit heavy on into what the Shadow Beast is. Now, for those of you who don't know the life of Gloria Anzaldúa, she also suffered from chronic illness. She had diabetes, and she did pass away before the completion of her Ph.D. program. We do have a lot of her archives, her journals. I mean, all of her. I mean, we have so much from her, and it was really more of the collection. Trying to figure out what the best place would be, but it was a collaborative effort from her friends and loved ones putting information together. She had mountains and mountains of journals. And while I do keep a journal on my PhD journey and my feelings and my thoughts going through classes, going through certain things or kind of the challenges that I'm facing, um, mine are nowhere near as intellectual and beautiful and wonderful as her. So a lot of this series is my digital archive. Like I get like to show you my work. Mostly in the event that if I don't make it through my PhD program, you still have a way to cite me. You still have a way of knowing what my research entailed and things of that nature. Because a majority of what I'm sharing has never been published because I mean my work is enticing, the titles grab attention, but as far as I'm not a very strong writer, so a lot of this hasn't been published yet, and this is a series mostly to raise a kind of audience for it. So the Shadow Beast, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. So the Shadow Beast, of course, is a beast. It's a figure that comes out of you, usually through pain, usually through a type of rebellion. I used in the last video Melody as a type of example. So Melanie as a girl and a figure is one thing, but when she releases her inner zombie, that is her shadow beast. That is something coming out of her rebellion towards Dr. Caldwell. That's coming out of her rebellion towards society and where she's going. So this is what we're going to be doing with Encanto, because remember, they are a magical family. So we can see their shadow beast and it displays very differently, right? Either you're very, very strong. Peppa, Aunt Peppa, she controls the weather and everything. Abuela, can move rocks and things like that. There's healing properties. There's being able to grow things. So we can very easily see their shadowies. That's why we're pairing the two. Okay. Here's where the shadowies come from. So Borderlands, La Frontiera, the Nuesita, it's a symbol of inner rebellious selves that resents unnecessary and harsh authority. And unnecessary or harsh authority can be broken down into a few things, right? Nations, um, our nations, our fellow country people can also create certain laws, can create certain things that creates that harsh authority and unnecessary authority. We do have culture that can also develop that harsh authority, especially if you are of any type of religion, you might be prohibited from doing certain things. If we break that down further, we all come from a community, and sometimes our community thinks certain ways. I know for Gloria Anzaldua, she felt all of this as being a Mesita woman, and then from her culture, being told as a woman you can't do certain things. In her community, as a lesbian, she actually did not like that term for herself. But in her community, she also felt ostracized and this harsh, like unnecessary authority of who she was as a a woman of color being part of the queer community. And then again, you can break that down to family, break that down to friends, and even then, because again, this was in November, but even looking down, I'm like under family, I can put down as an individual. We taking all of this and making that harsh, unnecessary authority onto yourself as well. And that's what we're going to be examining through the relationship of some of these characters, particularly Abuela and Maribel. So Alma Madrigal, she is Abuela. This is her as a young mother. Um, because in Encanto we do see her where she's already I don't want to say older, but she's already matured, right? She's already like she's a fine wine in this one. She is the matriarch of her family. And here we get to see her as a young girl finding love, falling in love, becoming a wife, and becoming a mother of triplets. And one of the things that we forget, or one of the things that probably hasn't been shared, because in the beginning part of the movie, we do know that abuelo, grandpa, is not there. Now, how grandpa was not there, we're not sure if that was shared to the children or to the grandchildren, because it might have been something that seemed unnecessary not to expose them to that violence, which I think might have been a mistake. So at the end of the movie, when she's having a heart to heart with Maribel by the river, this is the story that we get to see. And so for the first time where we see Abuela as being very harsh and an unnecessary authority on Maribel, we first learn that she is a victim. She's a victim of nations, right? So this story takes place in Colombia, so they do have certain laws and rules that are causing restriction, and their culture and community, it has turned violent towards them. This is their harsh and unnecessary restrictions and punishment. And Abuela finds her inner shadow beast to protect her community and her family um, with the rocks, right? She moves the rocks to keep them away. But the only way that she can harness this power, this inner shadow beast, is she first has to witness the murder of her husband. And with Gloria Anzaldua, we do have Coale Shakwi, um, who does get into so Coale Shakwi gets into a fight with her brother, Pochli Pochli, and Pochli Pochli rips her to pieces, throws her up into the air and into the stars. She's constantly being pulled apart and being put together in many, many different ways so that Koala Shakti cannot fully be connected once again and get her power. So in a way, while Gloria Anzaldúa was using this for the Shadow Beast, I did talk about how this image, particularly with Abuela, becomes a symbol of PTSD, becomes a symbol of victimhood. You are constantly being pulled apart and never being able to be whole again. But Abuela decides not to share this for many different reasons. And because of that, her harsh and unnecessary authority doesn't come out very well, so to speak. So here's the Abuela character that we know, we see, we meet. So we meet her at the tail end of her story, where we don't see how she was created, but we do know that she was created. And you never want to work or do on anything that can't be used at a later time. So I don't want to say like Abuela is a eugenicist in a way, but you can also see her in that atmosphere where she decides which of her grandchildren is going where, what priorities they feel into, and her treatment of Maribel. Right, she is adhering to this older standard of where we came from. So then we get to Maribel, and all of the family members, they all have their different strengths, they all have their different powers, and then we get to Maribel. And Maribel is the star of Encanto, the one that we are kind of learning everything through her eyes, because she is knowing that the casita, the magical house, is falling apart, the magic is going away, and she's like, I need to find out why. Um, this is happening. Let me go back. Um, so she's on this journey to figure out what prophecy was written about her, what her uncle knows about her, what her family knows about her. And while many people assume that she doesn't have a shadow beast, right? Because it's often depicted she doesn't have powers. I'm gonna say with eugenicist Abuela is she doesn't have powers that Abuela believes are something, so to speak. Because Abuela is like, this is the type of power. You can move rocks, you can break them, you can move churches, you should be able to hear things from miles away. You should be able to make it rain or storm. But Maribel displays a certain type of power differently. And Abuela does not view that as power and as authority, and because of that, Maribel is often very separated. So in this photo, it's towards the end, so they're all here and reunited, but there is a scene where they take a photo as a family, and Maribel is almost excluded. No one seems to invite her except for um, the younger cousin, who it's his celebration. And again, this fits with the motif of eugenics because it's the younger, the newer generations that are like, we are going to break this old way of thinking. We know this old idea does not working, and we're going to change it, which is why he becomes very inviting. So I think here, start sharing because I got to go back. So I'm going to try to show this little baby Maribel. So those of you that haven't seen it, this is what we're looking at. So every member of this magical family has a ceremony. That ceremony is Abuela from her candle gives them a door. They touch the door and the door opens to reveal their their powers. So their powers and their shadow beast comes from Abuela. Okay, it comes solely from Abuela. And as we were talking earlier, the shadow beast comes from many different things: culture, nations, community, uh, family, friends. So we have already, through Abuela's action of we're not going to share the story of how Grandpa and the community came about, not in detail. She's already made herself the top harsh and unnecessary authority in the story, um, which many people said like she's the villain, right? Because of that. And I I believe that Maribel does have powers, right? She does have powers. She is very strong. Um, I know one of the examples that I use is like when she goes and asks Aunt Peppa, and she's like, um, tell me about Bruno. And Bruno can be a representation of many things, right? One of the things that eugenics went after heavily was homosexuality and weeding out queerness. Anything like, oh, it's okay to be brown, it's okay to be you, but you can't be queer, which is something that we don't see demonstrated with this family. Not yet, anyway. Or not in a way that is like overt, right? Because the sister, right? The very strong sister, yes, they put her in a dress and make her look feminine. They could have also done something else with that characteristic. They could made her a little bit more, butch or stud like, um, which could very much represent the like an overt queer person. I know I had a queer friend who very much identified with Luisa because of that and was like, Luisa is the queer character in Encanto. Um, so like I said, sometimes like our older generations, our grandparents, our eugenic generations have created this idea that we are not going to talk about Bruno, right? We are not going to talk about your cousin being gay. We are not going to talk about your cousin liking men. We're not going to talk about this. Um, while there have been many, we're not going to talk about Bruno's. No one has ever opened up in a song and dance and explained to me why we're not talking about this. It's just a rule. You don't do it. Um, so the fact that Maribel can ask one question and people are essentially slipping out all of their secrets about Bruno tells me that she is able to get people to open up, right? Um, so her gift is displayed very differently. So Peppa explains why she doesn't like Bruno because of what happened on her wedding day. Then her cousins are telling her, "Hey, I see Bruno walking around at night," because her cousin can turn into right. He can turn into anybody that he wants, and he turns into Bruno with rats. We don't find out till after this scene that Bruno is friends with rats. So he's like, "I've seen him. He's stalking the halls, like he's here." And then her cousin is like, "And I can hear him too. I hear him in the walls, like he's here somewhere." Um, it's not very clear that this is what they're saying, but that's exactly what they're trying to tell Maribel. And you can obviously tell that these are secrets that they've kept for a very long time, right? They're not telling mom and dad, they're not telling each other, they're not telling, especially not telling Abuela, but they're telling Maribel. So I thought that was very significant. And in the movie, right, Abuela is the one that becomes this harsh authority. She's the one who's giving the power, who's giving the shadow beast. Like she has to be this harsh authority, right? She's also dividing them. Everybody gets their own room, everybody gets their own space, everybody gets their own category, and they do not break it, which is what is happening with Luisa and Isabella. When they're like, I have to be the pretty one, I can't be anything other than that. I have to be the strong one, and the oldest one, I can't be anything other than that because this is what has been given to me. And Maribel is able to ask them in her own sisterly way, and get them to open up on what their fears and their secrets are. And while Abuela sees her as no powers, Maribel has the biggest powers of all because she's like, I can take down your walls, right? Abuela moves the rocks. Abuela has kept this community away from everybody else, for protection for obvious reasons. But Maribel Maribel can break down the walls. Remember, Bruno can't even get out because the walls are so high, and Maribel can break them down. Maribel can move them. So while her powers don't like, while her shadow beast doesn't seem like it's doing anything, um, it's doing more than we think it is. I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint real fast. Ooh, that's been, I hope it's not playing in the background because I can't hear anything. Um, because that would suck if it was playing in the background. Um, what was I doing? PowerPoint. PowerPoint, right? So we're going through here. So here is both of our surrogate scapegoats. It's been researched quite a bit in psychology, um, with many particular Latinx, Hispanic, Chicano families, is that certain generations and certain people have become the scapegoats. So while we think Luisa might be a very closeted queer, it's possible that Bruno might have been a very open out queer, which caused him to be the scapegoat of basically Abuela's harsh treatment. So he's basically the first shadow beast representation that goes into hiding, and Maribel is there to bring him out. So Bruno's trying to run and hide. Maribel's got the power. She's got the power to bring him out. She's got the power to say, "Hey, I found you," um, which makes her probably the most significant, important one of all. When Casita is falling apart and the family's falling apart, who notices? Who can see it? Who can put it back together is Maribel. So she's quite literally breaking down the traditional, um, the generational traumas that's happening by bringing her uncle out from the back of from the back of the house into the front of the house, back into the light and everything else, bringing Abuela's pain out because it's quite possible even her children don't know the full story of what happened to Abuela, what happened to the town. And again, with one question, Maribel can ask the one right question that can bring out Abuela's pain that changes the entire dynamic of their relationship. So then here's another picture of them being happy together as a family, because once all of the generational pain is out in the open, once all of the queerness and everything else that has been festering, the house breaks apart. And even though Maribel can break and bring everything out to the light, she can also put it back together. So her shadow beast, and I don't have, like, I should have got my shirt. Hold on. All of this. Okay. So I couldn't find my t-shirt because I'm a messy graduate student, but I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to sharing my screen because I might have something else that I can share. So our theme for that particular conference, just for El Mundo, I always say misspelled the word Zurdo, which is the left-hand way from Gloria Anzaldua. So this was the image that we had here, Gole Shakwi with a heart around it, bringing back the heart to Gole Shakwi. Because remember, as we talked about, Gole Shakwi was pulled apart. She's up in the cosmos, constantly trying to put herself back together, and she can't. She can't get back together. She can't be whole. And Abuela, with her PTSD, is the same way. And every time that she's ripping and she's tearing and she's pulling apart, she's also doing the same thing to her family members. So she didn't realize that she was doing that to Maribel as well. So bringing back the heart to Cole Shakwi, Maribel does the same thing. She rips Cole Shakwi apart, but she's not ripping her apart out of violence. She's not ripping her apart out of hatred. She's not even ripping her apart because she wants to be better or she wants to be the matriarch of the family. She's doing it to find the heart. So I would say Abuela is Goela Shakwi. She was torn apart with her broken pieces. She created the family. Maribel became, unfortunately, the scapegoat and the second person that was pulled apart because of Abuela's pain and PTSD. But when Maribel went and said, we are going to pull everybody apart, we are going to pull the casita apart, we are going to pull this part, she was looking for the heart, and it's the heart that saved the Madrigal's family, saved their relationship, and now this is what they're like. So it really fit into our conference theme that we're bringing the heart back to Koala Shakwi. We're bringing healing back to generational trauma. We're talking about it in order to find forgiveness, in a sense. And so the way that it ties in kind of with my larger project is we need to do the same thing with eugenics and the way that it's impacted our literature and how we do research, how we tell stories. We need to pull all of that shit apart, just pull it apart. And we need to find the heart and we need to find the forgiveness in order to move on, in order to tell the stories the way that we need to tell them, in order to teach stories the way that we need to teach them. What you will hear later on in the stories is me talking about a particular pedagogy that I call Brown misfit pedagogy, which is designed to combat the literary eugenics that has been occurring. So part of this story is showing how we can do that. It's with love and forgiveness, right? We rip it apart, we talk about it, it's there, we find the forgiveness, and then we start teaching the stories the way that we need to be taught. And that's how we break it, is by teaching each generation how not to fall into those traps, by being able to recognize when eugenics is playing a part in our stories. So I'm sure that's not what you thought Encanto or Gloria Anzaldua was going to lead to, but this is the third part of my series, and I'm kind of getting excited because I'm like, this is the meat. This is the meat and bones, the bread and butter of where my dissertation is going. Like always, give me some feedback, give me some comments, give me some questions. I always offer that and I never get any. So please, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.